Alex, I want to take you back to the day before the All-Star break, because it was the day your team suffered an injury that felt at the time like it was going to wreck your season. It's the day Ronald Acuña Jr. hurts his knee. He's out for the year. And I was at the All-Star game, and I remember telling somebody that day after we heard this news, I don't know how Alex Anthopoulos can possibly feel the same about his team today that he felt yesterday. So why was that injury not a death knell for your season?
Well, not to keep piling on, but in that same very day, Ian Anderson went out and pitched and came out with a sore shoulder. So, and he was throwing, 3.5 ERA. So it was just like, if you ever watched the movie My Cousin Vinny, how much more can we pile on? And it was, the thing is we had draft meetings going on too, right? So it was just like, it was just a crazy, it's been a really challenging year. I'm not complaining because these are great jobs and everything else, but just with everything, you want to win. We're all competitive. Yeah, Saturday, Acuña, we get the news on Sunday that he's done for the season. Then Ian Anderson comes out with the sore shoulder, and we were going to be waiting on an MRI the Tuesday of the All-Star break. So, we didn't know what to expect there. And it was not a good feeling going into the All-Star break on the Monday, and we were in the middle of the draft as well. But we were still hanging on. We were still close. I don't know if we were 4 out, 5 out. We were still close. So, it didn't look good. It didn't feel good. I've just been part of a lot of teams that haven't made the playoffs, won, or have been out of it and not played meaningful games into September. And Doug knows you get to August and fantasy football is the big thing. You're facing a tough starter and you're out of it. Guys all of a sudden come up with quads and hamstrings and I just can't go today. And they start dropping like flies. It's just a miserable way to live. And obviously the fans experience it too. And, I just think as long as you have a chance, I think you owe it to so many people, the staff, the fans, ownership, your players, your clubhouse, to keep trying and keep going.
Yeah, so let's go back to that point in time because you're dealing with all this news, you're juggling all the draft stuff, and while all this is going on during the All-Star break, you made 2 trades during the break. Okay, right? You trade for Jock Peterson from the Cubs, Stephen Vogt from the Diamondbacks. So how did those deals come about? And maybe more importantly, were you trying to send a message to your team when you made them?
Yeah, so it was like you said, it was a really crazy time. So, I'm Canadian, and my wife's side of the family is still up in Canada. So they normally head back to just outside of Toronto for the summer. So they had left at the end of June 27th, and I hadn't seen them in about 3 weeks. And I was planning on heading back to Canada too. And there's all kinds of laws and restrictions to get in. So I was only going to get there because we were back at home on Friday. So we had the draft, and I was only going to get back for a day or two, and I hadn't seen them in 3 weeks. So as you can imagine, when I got back and, we got quality time, we're going to squeeze out these 48 hours, things changed. So, I felt like, and organizationally, we needed to try to do something. It definitely looked bleak, and it was important in my mind to send a message to the clubhouse that we weren't pulling the plug. I had a very good sense that the minute we reported back on Friday, the conversation was going to shift to, sky is falling, Anderson's out, Acuña's out for the season now. We'd obviously lost Ozuna, Darno, and Noah, a lot of other players. And I felt like the topic was going to change to, you guys are selling, who's going? And that was going to permeate the clubhouse. And, we weren't ready to go that route. So I called Jed Hoyer during the All-Star break. He was trying to juggle the same things. We were both hadn't spent time with family, and he had a lot of things going. And I just explained to him that I would do more and pay more for a deal now. I was very transparent. The timing of the deal was as important as the deal itself, because I felt like, and I wanted to get it on the board by Thursday night, Friday morning at the latest. So when guys showed up, it was like, we're adding, we're not selling. And that conversation was going to get crushed right out of the gate. So, obviously we liked Jock and we thought he was a good player, but it was definitely timing was critically important in my mind because we we talked about it before. Our 2 weeks of games coming out of the break were against really, really good teams. The Brewers, the Padres, Tampa Bay. We had 5 against the Mets, the Phillies. We had a meat grinder those last 2 weeks. So it was important. I felt like from a morale standpoint, our guys we were going to move forward, and I was going to continue to try to add. And we were, as an organization, going to continue to try to add.
Well, let me ask you about those 2 weeks, because those 2 weeks, your team did something incredible. Alternated wins and losses every other game for that whole time. And I'm always interested in how a GM watches his team play 500-ish baseball for so long and still feel like it's worth trying to win. You know that expression, you are what your record says you are? This is 100 games into this season. So why did you think you were more than your record says you were?
No, I think there was a few components, and you're right. We, being around the 500 mark in that stretch was a good outcome considering how things had been going and the players that we had lost and so on. And I think generally speaking, our run differential was pretty solid. I think it was as good as anyone in the NL East. So that was a quick indicator from that standpoint. We had a bunch of players that obviously were really talented, but weren't playing up to what they had done in the past. And they had all the ability. It's not like they had lost their talent or ability. And you felt like at some point there'd be a regression of the mean, that these guys were going to start playing better. And the other component was, Ian Anderson, we felt like would be back at some point in August. Anoa would be back at some point in August. Darno would be back at some point in August. So those are really impactful guys. And you still have another 6 weeks left, but we had 60 games left. 60 games, a lot of games. And, I give our manager, our coaches, our players all the credit in the world because they kept us close. And we tried to make trades all season, but very few clubs are motivated to make deals early, both from a competitive standpoint, fan base, clubhouse. It's tough to start selling. So most times these deals happen at the end of July. So to have to wait pretty much till the end of July to be able to add your players and your coaches and your manager, you need to be able to keep the team close, and they did that. They certainly deserve all the credit for being able to keep the club close until we were able to add.
Yeah, well, Alex, I'm always curious about the communication from operations, from general manager seat to the players. You've outlined very clearly your belief in this team. How does that message get to the players in terms of, saying, hey, we're in this? Is that something you communicate directly through the manager? What's your communication approach with that?
Yeah, so I didn't talk to anybody. I knew obviously you lose Acuña, you lose Ian Anderson, things that already not been going well. And there's a lot of times the general manager, I feel as though, again, this is just from failing and experience, the same way when things aren't going well, you need to show that you're trying. And it may just be sometimes shaking it up, making changes, calling a guy up, doing what you can, trying to add. Sure, you can sit guys down and talk to them and so on. And I didn't have any team meetings or pull guys aside in an office or anything like that at all. But I did, I think, a night before the trade deadline, talk to a few guys because we were on the road. We just got back from the road trip. So it was late at night and just wanted to we had a lot of things going. And wanted to talk to a few of the guys and just let them know where my head was, what we were going to look to do. And look, some of them were just very realistic. Our guys, we have a good group of guys look, we don't know that you'll be able to, are there enough guys out there? We need a lot of needs and so on. And even I think going into the All-Star break and so on, I was seeing one of our teams and I was talking to one of our players. And I was seeing one of our teams in the minor leagues and so on. And he's like, oh, what are you doing there? And I said, look, I want to see, I want to kind of get some eyes on guys. We may be trading some guys away. And, the mindset was just like, man, we're really, I understand if we can't add in light of what's gone on this past year, the injuries, the guys we've missed and so on. It's just, I got it. This just might not be our year. Right. And my response was just like, yeah, I understand. I get it. It's not unreasonable to think that way, but we still have a chance. We still have a good team. No one's really pulled away from this thing. And if we could add some players, we have talent and guys can play better. And, there's definitely a chance there. And, really the one executive who's really impacted me when it comes to this is Billy Beane is really the guy that, I got to know him when I was an assistant to JP Ricciardi, and they're very good friends. And you see it. They never go through these 5-6 year rebuilds and so on. And they have as many challenges as anybody from, financial standpoint and so on. And they always try, they always go for it. And I know his mentality is, if you can just stay close up until the trade deadline, a lot of teams are going to have to make a tough decision to sell, and they're going to fall off. And if you're willing to be aggressive and take some risks and add, you have a chance. And it's a lot more fun doing these jobs when you have a chance to win. So I had my first 5 years as a GM, we didn't make the playoffs. My 6th year, we finally did. And now it's been 5-6 years that been in the playoffs or played important games in a row. And I don't want to go back. I know what it's like. I remember what it's like. I remember well what it's like. And, there's a lot of components in these positions. You feel like, beyond the fan base and everything else, the whole organization, they look to you as well, like stadium employees, all the other side, the people that put it all together, that run the club day in and day out. They live and die with this team too. And sometimes you have to go up and explain yourself to them, and you feel bad because you let them down. You have control over adding players, the roster, and so on. And when a team is out of it and they don't have a chance, it's tough to stomach. So if we're close, I think our mentality, and if we feel we have a real shot, I think we're always going to look to add when we can.
All right, so let's talk about deadline day, okay? Now, I don't know if you're going to win the Executive of the Year award, but I felt back then like you were going to win the Executive of the Day award. You traded for 3 outfielders in one day. I was kidding Doug earlier that you traded for every outfielder in America except him. So you can confirm that he was never on your radar screen, right? No Doug Glanville trades?
We talked about it briefly. We just want a little more power. So
yeah, don't blame you. More plate discipline.
Right, that's right.
I didn't want to say it.
Down.
So listen, have you ever traded for 3 outfielders in one day before? And has anybody?
Yeah, and look, it wasn't by design. We were trying to do stuff a week before, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Look, I've had this happen a few times, trade deadline. I really don't like doing things the last day. I don't. It's a scramble. There's a lot going on. All 30 clubs are having dialogue. You're up against the clock. You've got to get your trainers involved, doctors, and so on. It's just not a good environment to make a decision in. So, but it just worked out that way. Now, look, our projected starting outfield was gone. So we essentially needed to replace 3 outfielders. And we got through the season for 4 months with the group that we had, and they did a solid job for us. But we didn't, I definitely don't want to be in that position, have to add that many players and make that many trades. I would much rather be in a position where you're like the Chicago White Sox. And, you need a second baseman, you need a reliever, and you're good because you're winning the division, you're in great shape, and you just need to tweak and so on. But look, we had a lot of work to do. We had a lot of holes. And, that's, you look back, and I wish I'd done more in the winter, earlier in the season, and so on. But I'm glad we were able to salvage some things and get back to being competitive again.
So what was the craziest deal out of all those deals on deadline day?
I got a time. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. The deals we did Duvall, Rosario, and Rodriguez, right?
And Soler.
Oh, and Soler. That's right. Oh, yeah. Soler was, so that's right. We did 4. I'm sorry. It was a bit of a blur. But, yeah, Soler was, Duvall and Rosario were done earlier in the day. We almost did them in tandem at the same time. Rodriguez, we had been talking about for a while. It was start, stop. And that one came in. I mean, we agreed with basically 45 minutes to go, an hour to go. Soler was the last minute deal. We had talked to Kansas City earlier in the week. I think it was on one of, either Monday or Tuesday. We had talked to them, and we just kind of didn't get anywhere. And then really with 30 minutes to go, we got it back on track, and we completed that one so fast that I think our trainer was like, "Hey, I don't even know we got Soler." Like, it had happened right at the last minute. So that one, he was on our radar. We had talked about him, but yeah, that one came in pretty last minute, and that was not crazy, but it was quick, and I won't say rushed, but you're up against the clock. You do worry about being able to get these deals in.
Yeah, and he was a DH, right? He'd hardly play the outfield at all. And now think about where your team might be if you had not made that deal.
No, no doubt about it. And you do all this stuff as a group, and I give one of our AGMs, Jayson, a lot of credit because the talks with Solera died, and he brought it up again and said, maybe there's a way to redo this, to take examine it again, and so on. And there's a lot of things flying on those days, and you have a group of people and staff, and GMs aren't doing this stuff on their own. They're not making all the phone calls and all the texts, and you need a group of people doing the administrative, talking to other teams, talking to AGMs, and so on. But I give him a lot of credit to keep it alive, and we're glad to be able to get it done. He's been great for us.